Doctor humiliates woman in wheelchair on the street. But fate teaches her a harsh lesson. Dr. Jennifer Thompson never imagined that a simple walk through Denver's Central Square would change her life forever. At 42, she was considered one of the most respected neurologists in the region, accustomed to the prestige and admiration her profession brought her. It was when she saw that young woman in the wheelchair trying to cross the busy street that something inside her snapped. The woman in the green blouse, who didn't look older than 30, was clearly disrupting traffic during lunch hour. "You're faking it," shouted Jennifer, quickly approaching the wheelchair user. "I'm a specialist and I know a fraud when I see one." The young woman looked at her frightened, clutching a crumpled prescription tightly in her trembling hands. "Doctor, please, I just need to cross to get my medication from the pharmacy over there," whispered Rebecca Wilson, trying to stay calm in the embarrassing situation. "Medication? What medication does a faker like you need?" Jennifer adjusted her sunglasses and put her hands on her hips. "People like you do a disservice to those who really have special needs." A small group of onlookers began to form around the two women. Some whispered among themselves, others discreetly pulled out their phones. The square, which moments before had been bustling with typical lunchtime activity, now had a new center of attention. Rebecca felt her face burn with shame. Her hands were shaking so much she almost dropped the prescription she was taking to the pharmacy. It was a special medication for neuropathic pain, something she had been taking religiously for 3 years, ever since the accident that completely changed her life. "Doctor, you don't know me," Rebecca tried to explain with a choked voice. "I really need this medication. No, I know people like you very well." Jennifer raised her voice even more, attracting more stares. "Opportunists who use a wheelchair to get privileges, to cut in line, to gain pity from others." A churro vendor who had been working there in the square for over 10 years watched everything discreetly from his cart. His name was Michael, a simple man in his early 50s who knew almost everyone who frequented that place. He had never seen the doctor before, but he knew Rebecca well. The young woman passed by there every week, always polite, always with a smile on her face, even while carrying that deep sadness in her eyes. "Please, doctor, I can show you my test results." Rebecca extended a folder with documents she carried on her lap. "Fake test results? You're experts at that." Jennifer snatched the prescription from Rebecca's hands and held it up in the air. "I'm going to photograph this and show it at the hospital where I work as an example of what we shouldn't tolerate." Tears began to stream down Rebecca's face. She couldn't understand where so much anger, so much hatred directed at her was coming from. She tried to get the prescription back, but Jennifer kept it out of reach. "That prescription is mine, please. I need it," Rebecca begged. "Fakers don't deserve real medication." Jennifer tore the prescription into tiny pieces and threw the fragments on the ground. "This is what I do with charlatans!" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the traffic seemed to slow down at that moment. Rebecca looked at the pieces of paper scattered on the ground of the square, and a pain much greater than any physical pain took over her chest. Michael, the churro vendor, couldn't stand just watching any longer. Discreetly, he took his phone out of his pocket and started recording the scene. Something told him that this was very wrong, very unfair. "Doctor," said an elderly lady who was witnessing everything, "don't you think you're overdoing it?" "Overdoing it?" Jen turned to the woman. "Ma'am, people like that shame those who truly need special care. I dedicate my entire life to helping real patients." Rebecca tried to lean down from her chair to pick up the pieces of the prescription, but her legs wouldn't respond. They hadn't responded since that terrible day 3 years ago when her life changed forever. "Just look," Jen pointed at Rebecca. "She can't even fake paralysis well. A truly paralyzed person would never try to lean down like that. I just wanted to pick up the pieces," Rebecca murmured through tears. "What for? To glue them and try to use them somewhere else?" Jen crossed her arms. "I'm going to report you on all the hospital's social media. I'll make you a national example of fraud." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The public humiliation lasted nearly 15 minutes. 15 minutes that felt like an eternity to Rebecca. who remained there motionless in her chair, receiving accusations and insults from a complete stranger who claimed to be a doctor. When Jen finally walked away, muttering about dishonest people infesting society, Rebecca was left alone in the middle of the central square with curious and embarrassed looks from the people around her. Michael approached her carefully. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked, offering a paper napkin. "Thank you." Rebecca wiped her tears. I just needed to buy my medicine." "I know you, don't I? You always come through here on Thursdays." Michael crouched down to be at her level. "You're a good person, I know that. That woman was completely wrong." Rebecca nodded, still trying to process what had happened. She picked up the purse that had fallen to the ground during the commotion and began to move away, slowly pushing the wheels of her chair. "Wait!" Michael called to her. "I recorded everything. If you want, I can give you the video." Rebecca stopped and looked at him. For a moment, she thought about accepting, thought about using that footage to defend herself, to prove she was telling the truth. But then she shook her head. "No, thank you. I just want to forget this," she said, and continued moving away. Michael stood still, watching the young woman distance herself. There was something deeply wrong with that whole situation, and he couldn't get it out of his head. Meanwhile, Jen was walking back to Mercy Medical Center, where she had worked for 15 years. She felt strangely irritated, as if the anger she had unleashed on the wheelchair user hadn't been enough to calm the storm inside her. In recent months, Jen had been particularly stressed. Her 20-year marriage had ended messily. Her ex-husband had moved to the countryside with his secretary, and she was dealing alone with the debts he had left behind. Besides, her mother, Mrs. Margaret, 75 years old, had been showing worrying signs of frailty, frequent falls and memory lapses that kept Jen in a constant state of alert. When she arrived at the hospital, Jen noticed unusual activity at the reception. Several people were looking at their phones and whispering among themselves. Some staff members looked at her differently, as if they knew something she didn't. "Dr. Jennifer," called Kathy, the administration secretary. "Dr. Anderson wants to speak with you urgently." Dr. Robert Anderson was the hospital's general director, a serious and fair man whom Jen respected greatly. They had worked together on several projects over the years, and she couldn't imagine what he might want with such urgency. "Jen, please sit down." Dr. Anderson indicated a chair in front of his desk. His expression was grave, more serious than she had ever seen. "Did something happen?" Jen asked, feeling a chill in her stomach. "I'm afraid so," he sighed deeply. "We've received several calls in the last 2 hours. Apparently there's a video circulating on social media, a video where you appear humiliating a woman in a wheelchair." Jen's world collapsed at that moment. She felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. "Robert, I can explain," she began, but he raised his hand. "Jen, you need to understand the gravity of the situation. The video already has over 50,000 views. It's being shared in disability rights groups on medical pages everywhere." Dr. Anderson turned the computer monitor so she could see. On the screen, Jen saw herself yelling at Rebecca, saw the moment she tore up the prescription, saw the young woman's desperate face. For the first time, she was seeing the situation from the outside, and what she saw shocked her deeply. "My God," she murmured, bringing her hands to her face. "The comments are not favorable at all, Jen. They're calling for your dismissal, questioning your professional competence. Some are even threatening to sue the hospital." Dr. Anderson closed the browser. "I need to suspend you temporarily until we can better assess the situation." "Suspend me? Robert, please, this hospital is my entire life." Jen stood up from the chair, desperate. "I know, Jen. And that's exactly why I'm trying to protect your career. If you continue working now with all this pressure, the damage might be irreversible." He stood up as well. "Take a few days to think, to calm down, then we'll talk about the next steps." Jen left the director's office in a state of shock. Through the hospital corridors, she felt the stares of her colleagues, some compassionate, others judgmental. In 15 years of her career, she had never been through anything like this. When she got home, a large empty house she used to share with her ex-husband, Jen threw herself on the sofa and turned on the television. To her surprise and horror, the video was playing on a local news program. "Doctor humiliates woman with disability in Denver Central Square," the headline read. The anchor was commenting on the importance of respecting people with disabilities, on how healthcare professionals should be examples of compassion and empathy. Each word was like a dagger in Jen's heart. She turned off the television and stayed there, in the silence of her empty house, trying to understand how she had reached that point. How could a situation that lasted only 15 minutes have such devastating consequences? The phone rang. It was her younger sister, Christine, who lived in Chicago. "Jenny, what happened?" "I'm watching a video here." Christine's voice was worried. Christine, Jen couldn't finish the sentence. She started to cry, a deep cry that came from a very hidden place inside her. "Calm down, sis. Breathe. Tell me what happened." Christine spoke with affection. During the next 20 minutes, Jen told her sister everything. The separation, the stress with her mother, the pressure at work, and how all of that had exploded in that terrible moment at the square. "Jenny, you're going through a very difficult time. That doesn't justify what you did, but it explains it." Christine spoke carefully. "You need to seek help. You need to apologize to that young lady." "How? I don't even know who she is, where she lives." Jen wiped away her tears. "Figure it out. You're smart, you're a doctor, you're a good person deep down. I know you are," Christine sighed. "But you need to fix this." After hanging up the phone, Jen kept thinking about her sister's words. Was she really a good person? After what she did in that square, she wasn't sure of anything anymore. That same night on the other side of the city, Rebecca was at home, a small apartment she shared with her younger sister Jessica, who was 22. Jessica was a nursing student and worked part-time at a clinic to help with expenses. "Becky, you need to eat something." Jessica placed a plate of food on the kitchen table. "I'm not hungry," Rebecca replied without taking her eyes off the window. "You didn't even take your medicine today because of that." Jessica stopped talking, seeing the pain on her sister's face. Rebecca had come home without the medications and had told Jessica what happened in the central square. The younger sister was outraged, wanted to go find the doctor and give her a piece of her mind, but Rebecca stopped her. "Jess, you know that without the medicine, I get much worse." Rebecca finally looked at her sister. "The pain is almost unbearable. Tomorrow we'll go to the doctor to get another prescription." Jessica sat down beside her. "Dr. Williams will understand." Dr. James Williams was the neurologist who had been treating Rebecca since the accident. A kind man in his 60s who always treated the young woman with great care and attention. He worked at St. Benedict Medical Center on the other side of the city. "Jess, that doctor said I was faking," Rebecca whispered. "For a moment, I almost believed her." "Becky, no." Jessica took her sister's hands. "You know the truth. I know the truth. Everyone who knows you knows the truth. The truth." Rebecca closed her eyes and went back to that day, 3 years ago, that changed everything. She was coming back from physical therapy college, walking down the street when she saw a child running after a ball toward a busy avenue. Without thinking twice, Rebecca ran and pushed the child out of the path of a truck coming at high speed. The child was saved. Rebecca wasn't so lucky. The impact damaged her spinal cord in the lumbar region, causing complete paraplegia. The doctors were clear. She would never walk again. But Rebecca had saved a life, the life of little Ethan, who was only 5 years old at the time. "You did the right thing that day." Jessica seemed to read her sister's thoughts. "And you're doing the right thing now, every day, when you go to work, when you study, when you don't give up." Rebecca worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center for people with disabilities. It was a job she loved, one that gave meaning to her new reality. She helped other people who, like her, were learning to live a life different from the one they had planned. "Jess, what if she's right? What if I really am a burden to society?" Rebecca murmured. "Becky, stop." Jessica stood up, outraged. "You saved a life. You work, you study, you help other people every day. How could that be a burden?" That night, Rebecca could barely sleep. The pain without the medication was intense, but the emotional pain was even worse. That doctor's words echoed in her mind like a cruel and persistent echo. Meanwhile, Jen couldn't sleep either. She stayed up late browsing the internet, reading the comments about the video. Most people were outraged by her behavior. Some even wished terrible things would happen to her. Few defended that she might be going through a tough time. On one of the pages, she found an interview that Michael, the churros vendor, had given to a local blogger. He talked about Rebecca, about how she was a polite person and well-liked by everyone who worked in the central square. She always greets everyone, always has a smile on her face, even if we can see she's in pain, Michael said in the interview. And that doctor, I don't know what got into her. It was very cruel, very unnecessary. Jen felt an even greater pang of guilt reading that. She had attacked an innocent person, had taken out her frustrations on someone who had nothing to do with her problems. For the first time in a long while, Jen was forced to look within herself. Over the past few months, she had become a bitter, irritable person, always looking for someone to blame for her frustrations. The divorce had shaken her self-esteem. Worry about her mother made her anxious, and the pressure at work made her feel like she was losing control of everything. But none of that justified what she had done to Rebecca. None of that justified the gratuitous cruelty she had shown. The next day, Jen woke up determined to find Rebecca and apologize. She didn't know how, but she had to find a way. First, she went to the central square where it all happened. She found Michael at his churro cart. "So you're the doctor from yesterday," he said as he saw her approach, not hiding the dislike in his voice. "Yes, I am." Jen took off her sunglasses. "And I've come to ask for your help." "My help?" Michael laughed humorlessly. "You've already done enough damage." "I know," Jen sighed. "I know I did a terrible thing, but I need to find that young woman to apologize. Do you know where I can find her?" Michael studied her for a moment. There was something different about her today, something that seemed sincere. "Why should I help you?" he asked. "Because you're a good person. I saw how you treated her yesterday, how you tried to help." Jen moved closer to the cart. "And because I need to fix what I did." Michael was silent for a few seconds, thinking. "She always comes by here on Thursdays around 2 in the afternoon, he finally said. "She comes from the direction of the Rehabilitation Center over on Flower Street." "Rehabilitation Center?" Jen asked. "Yeah, she works there. She's a physical therapist." Michael looked at her seriously. "She's a very good person, doctor. If you're going to look for her, I hope it's to truly apologize." Jen thanked him and headed to the Rehabilitation Center. It was a simple 2-story building with a facade that conveyed warmth and hope. At the entrance, there were signs indicating the different services offered: physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychology, social work. At the reception, a young woman greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, can I help you?" asked the receptionist. "Good morning." Jen hesitated for a moment. "I'd like to speak with a physical therapist who works here. A young woman in a green blouse. I mean, she has brown hair, uses a wheelchair." "Oh, Rebecca." The receptionist smiled even more. "She's wonderful. But she didn't come in today. Said she wasn't feeling well." "I see." Jen felt her heart tighten, knowing she was probably the cause of Rebecca's discomfort. "Could you give me her contact information? It's personal." "Sorry, but we can't share personal information about our employees," the receptionist said politely. "But I can leave a message for her." Jen thought for a moment. Leaving a message wouldn't be the same as apologizing in person, but maybe it was a start. "Could you tell her that Dr. Jennifer Thompson stopped by and would really like to talk with her?" Jen wrote her phone number on a piece of paper. "And that I'm very sorry." The receptionist took the paper, promising to give the message to Rebecca the next day. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Jen spent the rest of the day trying to keep her mind occupied, but without success. She decided to visit her mother, Mrs. Margaret, who lived in a small house in the industrial district neighborhood. Mrs. Margaret was a strong woman who had raised 2 daughters alone after her husband passed away when Jen was just 15. She had always been the example of dignity and compassion for her daughters, but in recent months she had been showing worrying signs of frailty. "Jenny, I'm so glad you came." Mrs. Margaret greeted her daughter with a warm hug. "I was trying to fix the kitchen faucet, but these hands just won't cooperate anymore." Jen looked at her mother's hands, which trembled slightly. Mrs. Margaret had always been an independent woman who handled all the household problems by herself. Seeing her like this was a constant reminder that time spares no one. Mum, you can't keep trying to fix these things alone. Jen picked up the toolbox. What if you get hurt? Oh, honey, I've always done these things. I'm not going to stop now. Mrs. Margaret tried to take the wrench back. Mum, sit here. Let me handle this. Jen guided her mother to a chair. While fixing the faucet, Jen told her mother about what had happened at the central square, about the video, about the suspension from work. She only omitted the cruelest details of what she had said to Rebecca. Jenny, Mrs. Margaret said after hearing everything, you're going through a very difficult time, the divorce, worrying about me, work, but that can't be an excuse for mistreating other people. I know, Mum. Jen stopped working on the faucet and looked at her mother. I don't know what came over me. I've never been like this. You've always been a kind girl, Jenny. I remember when you were little, you always stood up for classmates who were being mistreated at school. Mrs. Margaret smiled affectionately. You wanted to be a doctor to help people. You can't let life's difficulties change who you truly are. And what if they already have, Mum? What if I've become a bad person? Jen sat on the kitchen floor, next to her mother's chair. Bad people don't feel remorse, honey. Bad people don't feel guilt. Mrs. Margaret stroked her daughter's hair. You need to find this young lady and apologize, not because of the video or your job, but because it's the right thing to do. Jen stayed at her mother's house until late afternoon. As she was getting ready to leave, Mrs. Margaret tripped on a rug in the living room and fell. Mom! Jen rushed to help her. I'm fine, honey. It was just a stumble. Mrs. Margaret tried to get up but winced in pain. No, you hurt your wrist. Jen examined her mother's hand. We're going to the hospital. No need, Jenny. It's just a little pain, Mrs. Margaret protested. Mom, you might have fractured something. As a doctor and as your daughter, I insist. Jen grabbed her purse and helped her mother up. They went to St. Benedict Medical Center, which was closest to Mrs. Margaret's house. It was a smaller hospital than Mercy Medical Center, but had a good reputation in the area. In the emergency room, they were seen quickly. The on-duty doctor, Dr. James Williams, examined Mrs. Margaret's wrist. It doesn't appear to be fractured, but we'll take an X-ray to be sure, said Dr. James, a friendly man around 60 years old. While waiting for the test results, Jen and Dr. James talked. Doctor, your name sounds familiar, he said. Aren't you the neurologist from Mercy Medical Center? Yes, I am, Jen replied, feeling a knot in her stomach. Had he seen the video too? What a coincidence. I have a patient who's a physical therapist and always speaks very highly of the neurologists there. Dr. James smiled. Rebecca Wilson. You must know her. Jen felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Rebecca was his patient. I met her recently, Jen murmured. What an extraordinary young woman, isn't she? Dr. James continued, unaware of Jen's discomfort. After everything she's been through, she still manages to be so positive, so dedicated to her work. It's truly inspiring. After everything she's been through? Jen asked, trying to keep her voice normal. The accident that left her paraplegic 3 years ago. She saved a child who was about to be hit by a car, but ended up being struck by the vehicle herself. Dr. Williams shook his head. At 27, to see her whole life change like that. But she never gave up. She finished college, specialized, and now helps other people in similar situations. Every word was like a stab to Jennifer's heart. Rebecca had actually become paraplegic saving a child. She was truly a heroine, an extraordinary person whom Jennifer had publicly humiliated out of pure ignorance and malice. Doctor, are you all right? Dr. Williams asked, noticing that Jennifer had turned pale. Yes, I'm fine, Jennifer lied. It's a very touching story. It really is. And the worst part is that yesterday she showed up here very upset, saying that a doctor at the Central Square had humiliated her, accused her of faking her disability. Dr. Williams sighed. There are still such insensitive people in the world, and even worse, a colleague in the profession. Jennifer wanted to disappear. She wished the ground would open up and swallow her. She was there, talking to Rebecca's doctor, hearing about the suffering she had caused. Is she okay today? Jennifer asked, trying to sound casual. I don't know. She didn't show up for the appointment we had scheduled today. She must still be very shaken. Dr. Williams looked sad. I hope she doesn't let one person's cruelty affect her wonderful work. At that moment, a nurse approached with Mrs. Margaret's X-ray results. Dr. Williams, there's no fracture, just a mild sprain, said the nurse. Great. Dr. Williams turned to Mrs. Margaret. Ma'am, I'll prescribe an anti-inflammatory and recommend rest. She'll be completely recovered in a week. After Mrs. Margaret was discharged, Jennifer took her back home. The whole way she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Dr. Williams. Rebecca had missed an important medical appointment because of what she had done. The situation was much worse than she had imagined. That night, Jennifer couldn't do anything but lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. She had become everything she always despised, a cruel, insensitive person who mistreated those who most needed understanding. The next day, Rebecca showed up at the rehabilitation center. She had spent 2 days at home, trying to process what had happened, trying to find the strength to continue. Becky, her colleague Patricia approached with relief. So glad you came. We were worried. Sorry I missed yesterday. Rebecca headed to her desk. I wasn't feeling very well. I completely understand. Patricia sat down next to her. Oh, and there's a message for you. A doctor stopped by here yesterday. Rebecca took the paper with the message and read it. Dr. Jennifer Thompson wanted to talk to her and said she was sorry. It was the doctor from the square. What are you going to do? Patricia asked. I don't know. Rebecca folded the paper and put it in her bag. I need to think. The day at the rehabilitation center was difficult for Rebecca. She worked mainly with children and teenagers who were learning to deal with different types of disabilities. Normally, that work energized her, made her feel she was making a difference. But today, that doctor's words echoed in her mind. You're faking it. People like you do a disservice to those who really have special needs. During the physical therapy session with Ethan, an 8-year-old boy born with cerebral palsy, Rebecca got distracted. Aunt Becky, are you okay? Ethan asked with his sweet, concerned voice. Yes, I'm fine, Ethan. Rebecca smiled, trying to hide her sadness. You look sad today, Ethan observed. My mother always says that when we're sad, we should talk to someone. Ethan is very smart, said the boy's mother, who always attended the sessions. And he's right. Sometimes talking helps. Rebecca smiled genuinely for the first time in 2 days. Children always manage to touch her heart in a special way. Thank you, Ethan. You're a very wise boy, she said. Aunt Becky, you help me get stronger every day. If you're sad, I want to help you too. Ethan smiled. In that moment, Rebecca remembered why she had chosen that profession. It wasn't just because of the accident, it was because she truly believed she could make a difference in people's lives. At the end of the day, Rebecca decided she wouldn't call the doctor. At least not yet. She needed more time to process everything that had happened. Meanwhile, Jen was spending her 3rd day of suspension trying to find a way to reach Rebecca. She had gone to the central square again, but Michael said Rebecca hadn't shown up. She thought about going to the rehabilitation center, but didn't want to cause more embarrassment for the young woman at her workplace. That's when the home phone rang. It was Dr. Anderson from the hospital. Jen, I need to talk to you urgently, he said, without preamble. What happened? Jen felt her heart race. I can't discuss it over the phone. Can you come here to the hospital? Dr. Anderson asked. An hour later, Jen was back in the director's office, more nervous than ever. Jen, the situation has become complicated, Dr. Anderson began, without beating around the bush. The Regional Medical Board has opened an ethics case against you, and the family of the young woman from the video is considering legal action. Her family? Jen asked, confused. Yes, apparently she has a sister who's a nursing student. This sister consulted a lawyer to evaluate the case. Dr. Anderson sighed. Jen, you need to resolve this, and you need to do it quickly. How? I tried to contact her, but Jen started. It doesn't matter how. Find a way, Dr. Anderson interrupted her, because if this becomes a lawsuit, it will be very difficult for the hospital to keep you on staff. Jen left the hospital even more desperate. Her career was hanging by a thread, and she didn't know how to fix the situation. That's when she remembered Dr. Williams. Maybe he could help her get in touch with Rebecca. It was a risky chance, but she didn't have many options. The next day, Jen went to St. Benedict Medical Center and looked for Dr. Williams. "Dr. Jennifer." He greeted her cordially. "How's your mother?" "Better, thank you," Jen replied. "Dr. Williams, I need your help with something very important." "Of course, how can I help?" he asked. Jen took a deep breath. It was now or never. "It's about Rebecca Wilson, your patient," she began. "What about Rebecca?" "Dr. Williams asked, concerned. I'm the doctor who humiliated her in the central square," Jen said quickly, before she lost her courage. Dr. Williams looked at her for a long moment, processing the information. "You?" he asked, incredulous. "Yes, me," Jen lowered her head. "And I'm deeply sorry. I need to apologize to her, but I can't find her." "Dr. Jennifer, what you did was terrible," Dr. Williams said, serious. "Rebecca is one of the most upright people I know. How could you do that?" "I have no excuses," Jen admitted. "I was going through personal problems and took it out on an innocent person. It was unforgivable." Dr. Williams remained silent for a few minutes, studying Jen. "Why do you want to apologize?" he asked finally. "Because it's the right thing to do," Jen replied without hesitation. "Because she didn't deserve that. Because I need to try to fix the harm I've done." "And it has nothing to do with the ethics complaint they filed against you?" Dr. Williams asked straight out. "Yes, it does," Jennifer admitted. "But even if there were no complaint, I would need to apologize. I can't live knowing I hurt a good person like that." Dr. Williams observed Jennifer for a few more seconds. There was sincerity in her words, a genuine regret he could perceive. "Rebecca is coming here tomorrow for an appointment," he said finally, "at 2 in the afternoon. If you want, you can wait for her in the reception." "Thank you," Jennifer said, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. "Thank you very much." "Dr. Jennifer," Dr. Williams called when she was getting up. "Rebecca is a special person. If you truly want to apologize, do it from the heart. She's already suffered enough." "I understand," Jennifer nodded, "and thank you for giving me this chance. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. The next afternoon, Jennifer arrived at St. Benedict Medical Center at 2 o'clock sharp. She had spent the whole night thinking about what she would say to Rebecca, how she could express her regret sincerely. She sat in the reception and waited. At 2:15, she saw Rebecca arriving, pushing her wheelchair with precise, determined movements. She was wearing a light blue blouse and carrying a folder with documents on her lap. Jennifer felt her heart race. This was it. "Rebecca." She stood up and approached. Rebecca looked up and recognized her immediately. Her expression hardened slightly. "Dr. Jennifer," she said, with no emotion in her voice. I'd really like to talk with you," Jennifer said, nervous. "If you'll allow me." Rebecca studied her for a moment. There was something different about the doctor today. She wasn't wearing sunglasses. Her eyes were red as if she'd been crying, and she seemed genuinely troubled. "About what?" Rebecca asked. "About what happened in the central square. About how I behaved." Jennifer took a deep breath. "I want to apologize, truly." Rebecca was silent for a few seconds. "Doctor, I have an appointment now," she said finally. "I'll wait," Jennifer replied quickly, "for as long as it takes." Rebecca nodded and headed to Dr. Williams' office. Jennifer sat back down in the reception, even more nervous. During the appointment, Dr. Williams asked about how Rebecca was handling the Central Square incident. "I'm doing better," Rebecca answered. "It still hurts, but I'm trying not to let it affect my work." "She's outside," Dr. Williams said calmly. "Who?" Rebecca asked, though she already knew the answer. "The doctor, Dr. Jennifer," he explained. "She came to see me yesterday, said she wants to apologize." "And you believe her?" Rebecca asked. "I believe she's sorry," Dr. Williams answered carefully. "But the decision to talk with her or not is entirely yours." Rebecca became thoughtful. Part of her wanted to just leave the hospital and never see that doctor again, but another part was curious about what she had to say. "All right," Rebecca said finally. "I'll talk with her." When Rebecca came out of the office, Jennifer stood up immediately. "Can I speak with you?" she asked. "We can talk over there." Rebecca indicated a more private waiting area at the end of the hall. They headed there in silence. Jennifer pushed a chair to be at Rebecca's level. "I don't know where to start," Jennifer said, her hands trembling slightly. "Start by explaining why you did that," Rebecca said directly. Jennifer took a deep breath and began to tell. She talked about the divorce, about the problems with her mother, about the stress at work. She explained how everything had piled up and how she had unfairly taken it out on Rebecca. "That doesn't justify what I did," Jen said, tears beginning to stream down her face. "Nothing justifies it. I was cruel, insensitive, prejudiced. I judged her without knowing her. Hurt you out of pure ignorance and malice." Rebecca listened to everything in silence, watching the doctor who seemed completely different from the person who had yelled at her in the central square. "And now?" Rebecca asked when Jen finished speaking. "Now I want to ask for forgiveness," Jen said, looking directly into Rebecca's eyes. "I know what I did is unforgivable, but I'm asking for forgiveness anyway. And I want to do something to fix the harm I caused." "There's nothing you can do," Rebecca said calmly. "What's done is done." "So you don't forgive me?" Jen asked, her voice almost a whisper. Rebecca remained silent for a long moment, watching Jen. She saw the genuine remorse, the sincere tears, the real shame on the doctor's face. "Dr. Jennifer," Rebecca said finally, 3 years ago, I was walking down the street when I saw a child running toward a busy avenue. Without thinking, I ran and pushed the child out of the way of the oncoming truck. The child was saved. I wasn't." Jen felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Dr. Williams had told the story, but hearing it directly from Rebecca was completely different. "The impact damaged my spinal cord," Rebecca continued. "The doctors said I would never walk again. At 27, my life completely changed." "Rebecca, Jen began, but Rebecca raised her hand. "Let me finish," she said. "During the first few months, I wanted to give up on everything. It seemed like my life was over. But then I realized I could choose, either surrender to despair or find a new way to live." Jen listened in silence, each of Rebecca's words touching her heart deeply. "I chose to live," Rebecca continued. "I finished my degree, specialized, and now I help other people going through similar situations. It wasn't easy, but I found a purpose." "You're an extraordinary person," Jen murmured. "No, I'm a normal person who faced a difficult situation," Rebecca corrected. "And what you did in the square, it hurt a lot. Not just physically, because I was left without my pain medication, but emotionally. For a moment, you made me question everything I had built." "I'm sorry," Jen said, tears flowing freely now. "I'm truly sorry. But you know what I realized?" Rebecca continued. "Holding on to anger, holding on to resentment, that would only hurt me more. It wouldn't change what happened and wouldn't do anyone any good." Rebecca looked directly into Jen's eyes. "I forgive you," she said simply. Jen began to cry harder. She hadn't expected forgiveness, especially not after hearing Rebecca's story. "Why?" she asked. "How can you forgive me after what I did?" "Because forgiving isn't about you, Dr. Jennifer. It's about me," Rebecca explained. "Forgiving is freeing myself from the weight of anger. It's choosing peace instead of bitterness." They sat in silence for a few minutes, both processing the moment. "Thank you," Jen said finally. "Thank you for the forgiveness I don't deserve." "Now, what are you going to do with this forgiveness?" Rebecca asked. "What do you mean?" Jen didn't understand. "Forgiving doesn't mean what you did had no consequences," Rebecca explained. "You're still responsible for your actions. The question is, what are you going to do to be a better person from now on?" Jen thought about the question. It was true, Rebecca's forgiveness didn't erase what she had done, but it gave her an opportunity to grow. "I don't know," Jen admitted. "But I want to learn. I want to be better." "Then start by being kinder to yourself," Rebecca said. Hurt people. If you don't tend to your own wounds, you'll keep spreading pain around." "You're right," Jen acknowledged. "I need to seek help. And maybe," Rebecca said, hesitating for a moment, "if you truly want to do something to fix what you did, you could help other people." There are many patients who need volunteers at the rehabilitation center where I work. You'd let me? Jenny asked, surprised. After everything I did? I would, Rebecca confirmed, but it wouldn't be easy. You'd have to learn to see people with disabilities as they really are, normal people facing specific challenges. I'd really like that, Jenny said sincerely, if you think I can help. Everyone can help, Dr. Jennifer. The point is being willing to learn. Rebecca smiled for the first time since they started talking. In that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was the beginning of something new, something based on mutual understanding and growth. Rebecca, Jenny said, can I ask you something? Of course. How are you so serene? After everything you've been through, how do you maintain that peace? Jenny asked, genuinely curious. Rebecca thought for a moment before answering. You know, Dr. Jennifer, I learned that life isn't about what happens to us, but about how we react to what happens, she explained. I could have chosen to be bitter, resentful, but that would only hurt myself. But isn't it hard? Aren't there days when you get angry about the situation? Jenny insisted. Of course there are, Rebecca laughed softly. I'm human. There are days I wake up feeling angry, sad, self-pitying. But I learned that feelings are like waves. They come and go. I don't have to let them sweep me away. How did you learn that? Jenny asked. Therapy. Lots of therapy, Rebecca said honestly. And also by talking with other people who went through similar situations. You don't have to go through this alone, you know. Jenny nodded, absorbing every word. She was beginning to understand that Rebecca wasn't just a victim of her actions, but a person with much to teach. And your family? How did they deal with the accident? Jenny asked. It was hard for everyone, Rebecca admitted. My younger sister Jessica took on much more responsibility than she should have. My parents, well, my mother couldn't handle it and ended up leaving. My father tried, but it was hard for him to see me like that. And now? Jenny asked, touched by Rebecca's sincerity. Now it's just Jessica and me. She's finishing nursing school and is the strongest person I know. Rebecca smiled affectionately. She was furious when she found out what happened at the Central Square. She wanted to go find you to settle the score, as she put it. She was right to be furious, Jenny said. I deserved it. No, nobody deserves hatred, Rebecca corrected. Jessica was protecting someone she loves, it's natural. But hatred only breeds more hatred. They talked for another hour. Rebecca told her about her work at the rehabilitation center, about the children she cared for, about how she found purpose in helping other people. Jenny talked about her career, about how she had fallen in love with medicine to help people, and how she had lost that in recent years. You know, Rebecca said when it was getting late, you remind me of a patient I treated a few months ago. How so? Jenny asked. She was a 50-year-old woman who had suffered a stroke. She arrived at the center extremely resentful, taking her frustration out on everyone, Rebecca recounted. She yelled at the physical therapists, was rude to other patients, caused trouble constantly. What happened to her? Jen asked, interested. At first, everyone wanted to give up on her. But I realized the anger was just her way of dealing with fear and sadness, Rebecca explained. Little by little, we talked, building trust. I discovered she was a teacher, that she loved her work and that she was desperate because she thought she could never teach again. And did she manage to? Jen asked. She did manage to return to teaching. Adapted, but she managed, Rebecca smiled. And do you know what she told me on the last day of rehabilitation? What? She said, Rebecca, thank you for not giving up on me when I had given up on myself. Rebecca looked directly at Jen. People do terrible things when they're hurt, Dr. Jennifer, but that doesn't mean they're terrible people. Jen felt a lump in her throat. Rebecca was offering her not just forgiveness, but hope. Rebecca, thank you, she said. Thank you for not giving up on me. It's still early for that, Rebecca said with a playful smile. You still have a lot of work ahead of you. When they said goodbye, Jen felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She had gained not only Rebecca's forgiveness, but an opportunity to grow, to become a better person. In the following days, Jen sought psychological help. She found a therapist, Dr. Melissa Sanders, who helped her better understand her behavior patterns and deal with stress and frustrations in a healthier way. "Jen," said Dr. Melissa during one of the sessions, "do you realize you have a pattern of putting a lot of pressure on yourself?" "How so?" Jen asked. "You demand yourself to be the perfect daughter, the perfect doctor, the perfect wife. And when something goes out of control, you explode," Dr. Melissa explained. "That's what happened with Rebecca." "But I need to be good at what I do," Jen defended. "Being good is different from being perfect," Dr. Melissa corrected. "Perfection is an unattainable ideal that only generates frustration. Excellence is doing the best you can within your human limitations." Jen was beginning to understand how she had become such a harsh person with herself, and consequently with others. "And how do I change that?" she asked. "By starting to practice self-compassion," Dr. Melissa replied. "Treat yourself with the same kindness you would treat a good friend." 2 weeks after her conversation with Rebecca at the hospital, Jen received a call from Dr. Anderson. "Jen, I have good news," he said. "The young woman's family withdrew any intention of a lawsuit, and the regional board suspended the investigation." "How?" Jen asked, surprised. "From what I understand, the young woman herself asked them not to pursue any legal action," Dr. Anderson explained. "She said you talked and resolved the situation." "Yes, we talked," Jen confirmed, moved by Rebecca's generosity. "Well, that means you can return to work next week," Dr. Anderson said. "But there are some conditions." "What are they?" Jen asked. "You'll need to do some hours of community service and undergo psychological monitoring," he explained. "It's a preventive measure to ensure something like this doesn't happen again." "I accept," Jen said without hesitation. "In fact, I've already started therapy, and I'm talking with a rehabilitation center about volunteer work." "Great," Dr. Anderson seemed satisfied. "Jen, we all deserve a second chance. I hope you make the most of yours." The following Saturday, Jen went to the rehabilitation center where Rebecca worked. She had scheduled a meeting with the coordinator to discuss how she could contribute as a volunteer. "Dr. Jennifer," the coordinator, Ms. Faith, greeted her cordially. "Rebecca told me about you both. It's great that you decided to help us." "Thank you for the opportunity," Jen said. "I would really like to contribute." "Well, we have several areas where you can help," Ms. Faith explained. "We have support groups for families, educational sessions about health, accompanying medical appointments." "I'll take anything," Jen said. "I just want to learn and help." "How about starting by shadowing Rebecca a few times?" Ms. Faith suggested. "She works mainly with children and teenagers. It would be a good way for you to better understand the work we do here." "Would she agree?" Jen asked hesitantly. "We've already talked about it." Ms. Faith smiled. "She said she'd be happy to mentor you." In the late afternoon, Rebecca finished her last appointment of the day when she saw Jen at the reception. "Dr. Jennifer," she approached. "How was the meeting?" "Good," Jen smiled. "It seems I'm going to be your apprentice." "Really?" Rebecca laughed. "Well then, get ready. Working with children is challenging." "I'm ready for the challenge," Jen said, determined. "We'll see," Rebecca said playfully. "Your first test is on Monday. There's a 12-year-old girl, Sophia, who's been here for 3 months and hasn't spoken a word to anyone." "Why?" Jen asked. "She was in a car accident with her family. She survived, but lost the use of her legs. She's dealing not only with the disability but with the trauma," Rebecca explained. "It's a case that requires a lot of patience and sensitivity." "I understand," Jen nodded. "What can I do to help?" "Just be present." "Sometimes healing begins simply by knowing someone cares," Rebecca said. On Monday, Jen arrived at the rehabilitation center, nervous but determined. Rebecca introduced her to the team and explained her role as a volunteer. During the session with Sophia, a shy girl with curly hair, Jen watched Rebecca work. It was impressive to see how she could be simultaneously professional and caring, firm and gentle. Sophia didn't speak, but her eyes followed Rebecca's every move. When Rebecca demonstrated an exercise, Sophia tried to imitate it. When Rebecca smiled, a slight smile appeared on the girl's face. "She likes you," Jen commented when they were taking a break. "The feeling's mutual," Rebecca replied. "Sophia reminds me of myself when I started here as a patient." "You didn't speak either?" Jen asked. "For weeks," Rebecca admitted. "I was so lost, so scared. I thought my life was over." "And what made you speak again?" Jen asked, curious. "A physical therapist named Ann Paula. She never gave up on me," Rebecca smiled nostalgically. "One day she brought in a 6-year-old child who had learned to walk with prosthetics. Seeing that little child facing such a big challenge with so much courage, something woke up inside me." "And you decided to become a physical therapist because of that?" Jen asked. "Partly," Rebecca confirmed. "I realized I wanted to be for others what Ann Paula was for me." "Where is she now?" Jen asked. "Ann Paula retired last year," Rebecca said sadly, "but she was my inspiration for choosing to work here at this center." At that moment, Sophia approached them, using her wheelchair. She held out a drawing she had made during the session. "Thank you very much, Sophia," Rebecca said, receiving the drawing. "It's beautiful." It was a simple drawing with colored pencils showing 2 people, one in a wheelchair and one standing, holding hands. "May I ask who these people are?" Rebecca asked gently. Sophia looked at Rebecca, then at Jen, and whispered her first word in 3 months. "Friends." Rebecca and Jen looked at each other, moved. It was a small progress, but meaningful. "Yes," Rebecca said, holding the drawing carefully. "Friends." After Sophia left with her mother, Rebecca and Jennifer stayed talking. "That was incredible," Jennifer said. "You got her to talk." "We did," Rebecca corrected. "Your presence was important too." Sophia realized there were other people who cared about her. "But I didn't do anything," Jennifer protested. "You were present. You showed genuine interest. That's more important than you realize," Rebecca explained. That afternoon, Jennifer went home with a feeling she hadn't had in a long time. Genuine satisfaction. She had helped someone, even if in a small way. In the following days, Jennifer continued her volunteer work at the center. She accompanied Rebecca and other professionals, learning about different types of disabilities, rehabilitation techniques, but mostly about compassion and patience. One afternoon, Rebecca took her to meet Peter, a 16-year-old boy who had lost his eyesight in a fireworks accident. "Peter is here to learn mobility and orientation techniques," Rebecca explained before entering the room. "He's still very angry." "I can understand," Jennifer said. 16 years old. It must be very difficult." When they entered the room, Peter was sitting in a chair, arms crossed, clearly irritated. "Peter, this is Dr. Jennifer," Rebecca made the introductions. "She's a volunteer here." "Another person feeling sorry for me," Peter muttered. "Actually," Jennifer said, surprising herself with her response, "I'm here because I need to learn some things about compassion and patience. You're not the only one facing challenges." Peter turned his head toward Jennifer's voice, interested. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Recently I did something terrible. I hurt a good person out of pure ignorance and anger," Jennifer explained honestly. "I'm here trying to learn to be a better person." "Who did you hurt?" Peter asked, even more curious. Jennifer looked at Rebecca, who nodded encouragingly. "I hurt Rebecca," Jennifer admitted. "I judged her without knowing her, said cruel things, humiliated her publicly." "Becky?" Peter asked, outraged. "But she's the nicest person here." "I know that now," Jennifer said, "and I'm here trying to make up for it somehow." "And she forgave you?" Peter asked. "Yes, she forgave me," Jennifer replied, "even though I didn't deserve it." Peter was silent for a moment, processing this information. "If Becky forgave you, then you must really be trying to become a better person," he said finally. "I'm trying," Jennifer confirmed. From that day on, Peter began to open up more. He talked with Jennifer about his frustrations, his fears, his dreams for the future, and Jennifer shared her own struggles, creating a genuine connection with the young man. "Dr. Jennifer," Peter said in one of their sessions, "do Do you think I'll be able to lead a normal life?" "Peter, what is normal?" Jennifer asked, sitting beside him. "You're 16 years old, you're intelligent, you have a sense of humor, you have people who care about you. That seems pretty normal to me." "But I can't see," Peter said, touching the bandage covering his eyes. "No, you can't see with your eyes," Jennifer corrected, "but you can see with other senses, with your heart, with your mind. You're learning that here." "Sometimes I'm afraid," Peter admitted. "Of course you are. Fear is normal when we face something unknown," Jennifer said. "I'm constantly afraid too." "What are you afraid of?" Peter asked, surprised. "Of not being able to become a better person, of repeating the same mistakes, of disappointing the people who are giving me a second chance," Jennifer was honest. "But you're trying," Peter observed. "That's something." "It's true," Jennifer smiled. "And you're trying too." That's what matters. After a few weeks working at the center, Jen began to feel a profound transformation within herself. She was learning to be more patient, more compassionate, more humble. On a Thursday afternoon, she and Rebecca were organizing materials when Rebecca asked, "How are you feeling about the work here?" "Grateful," Jen replied without hesitation. "I never thought I could learn so much working as a volunteer." "What have you learned?" Rebecca asked, curious. "I learned that strength has nothing to do with the absence of limitations," Jen said thoughtfully. "I met people here who are much stronger than me, even facing challenges I couldn't even imagine." "Like Peter," Rebecca suggested. "Peter, Sophia, all of you have taught me that courage isn't about not having fear, it's about continuing to walk, even with fear," Jen explained. "And you taught me that compassion isn't pity, it's recognizing the humanity in others. You've become a very different person from the one I met in the central square," Rebecca observed. "Do you think so?" Jen asked. "I'm sure," Rebecca confirmed. "That woman in the square was lost in her own pain. This woman here is finding purpose in helping others." "Thank you," Jen said, moved. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "People deserve chances to grow," Rebecca said simply. That weekend, Jen received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Anderson from the hospital. "Jen, I need to talk to you about an opportunity," he said. "What kind of opportunity?" Jen asked. "The hospital is creating an integrated neurological rehabilitation program. We want someone who understands both medicine and humanizing care," Dr. Anderson explained. "Your work at the rehabilitation center has reached my ears. Would you like to coordinate this program?" Jen was surprised. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a big responsibility. I need to think," she said. "Of course. But Jen, you're the ideal person for this. You have the technical knowledge and, from what I'm seeing, you've also developed the necessary human sensitivity," Dr. Anderson said. After the call, Jen kept thinking. It was a chance to use her medical experience to help people in situations similar to Rebecca's, but she also didn't want to leave the volunteer work at the center. On Monday, she talked to Rebecca about the proposal. "It's an incredible opportunity," Rebecca said, excited. "You should accept." "But what about the work here? I don't want to abandon you," Jen said. "Jen, you can do both," Rebecca suggested. "Coordinate the program at the hospital and continue as a volunteer here on weekends." "Do you think I could manage?" Jen asked, unsure. "I'm sure," Rebecca replied confidently. "You've become a different person. A person who understands that medicine isn't just about curing diseases, but about caring for people." "Rebecca," Jen said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you consider me your friend?" Jen asked hesitantly. Rebecca smiled, a warm and genuine smile. "Yes, I do," she replied. "A friend who taught me that forgiveness can transform lives. And you taught me that kindness is a daily choice," Jen returned. That afternoon, Jen called Dr. Anderson and accepted the proposal to coordinate the neurological rehabilitation program. She also talked to Ms. Faith about continuing as a volunteer on weekends. 2 weeks later, Rebecca received an unexpected call. It was from Ann Paula, her former physical therapist. "Rebecca," Ann Paula said excitedly, "I heard you're doing wonderful work there at the center." "Ann Paula." Rebecca was emotional. "I've missed you." "How did you know?" I have a contact at Mercy Medical Center. They said there's a doctor there who won't stop talking about the rehabilitation center where you work. Anne Paula laughed. It seems she's creating an integrated program and wants to partner with you. Dr. Jennifer, Rebecca smiled. She's a special person. From what I've heard, you two have an interesting story, Anne Paula said, curious. Rebecca told Anne Paula the whole story, from the humiliation in the central square to the friendship that had developed between them. Rebecca, you know I'm very proud of you, don't you? Anne Paula said when she finished telling. You've become exactly the person I knew you could be. Thank you, Anne Paula. You saved me, Rebecca said, emotional. No, dear, you saved yourself. I just showed you it was possible, Anne Paula corrected, and now you're doing the same for others. After the call, Rebecca kept thinking about how life can take unexpected turns. A few months ago, she had been publicly humiliated by a prejudiced doctor. Now, that same doctor had become a friend and an ally in the fight for the rights of persons with disabilities. On Friday of that week, Jen was at the hospital finalizing the last details of the rehabilitation program when her secretary announced a visitor. Dr. Jennifer, there's a young woman here who says she's your friend. Rebecca something, the secretary said. Send her in, Jen said, excited. Rebecca entered the room, admiring the surroundings. What a beautiful office, she commented. Thank you, Jen said. What brings you here? I have a proposal for you, Rebecca said, mysterious. What kind of proposal? Jen asked, curious. How about we create a support group for families of people with newly acquired disabilities? Rebecca suggested. You with the medical knowledge, me with the personal experience. It's a fantastic idea, Jen said, excited. Families really need support at that moment. I thought we could meet once a week, maybe on Thursday evenings, Rebecca continued. Thursdays? Jen laughed. The same day of the week we met in the square? Exactly, Rebecca smiled. A way to turn a painful day into something positive. I love the symbolism, Jen agreed. Let's do it. The following month, they started the support group. The first meeting had 5 families, all dealing with recent situations of acquired disability. Welcome to our group. Jen began the first meeting. I'm Dr. Jennifer, and this is Rebecca, my co-facilitator. We want you to know this is a safe space, Rebecca continued. Here you can share your fears, your frustrations, your hopes. One of the participants, a 50-year-old woman named Rose, raised her hand. My husband had a stroke 2 months ago, she said, her voice choked. I don't know how to deal with this. Sometimes I feel anger, sometimes guilt, sometimes despair. Rose, everything you're feeling is normal, Rebecca said with affection. When our life changes drastically, it's natural to go through these emotions. But how did you learn to cope? Asked Michael, a 40-year-old man whose son had lost a leg in an accident. Jen and Rebecca exchanged glances. It was time to share their own story. Actually, Jen began, our story is a bit different. I met Rebecca in a way not very pretty. For the next 20 minutes, they told their story to the group. They talked about the humiliation, about forgiveness, about how they turned a terrible encounter into a meaningful friendship. Are you saying it's possible to turn something bad into something good? Rose asked. We're saying there's always a choice, Rebecca answered. We can choose to be defined by the bad things that happen to us, or we can choose to grow from them. And how do we make that choice? Michael asked. One day at a time, Jennifer replied. Some days you'll choose well, other days you'll choose poorly. What's important is to keep trying. The group was a success. Week after week, the families gathered to share experiences, exchange advice, and offer mutual support. Jennifer and Rebecca facilitated the discussions, but mainly served as examples that transformation and growth are possible. 3 months after the group started, Jennifer received a call that sent her into a panic. It was from her mother's neighbor. Dr. Jennifer, your mother fell at home and can't get up, the neighbor said nervously. I called an ambulance. They're taking her to St. Benedict Medical Center. Jennifer dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When she arrived, she found her mother in the emergency room, conscious but clearly weakened. Mom, how are you? Jennifer asked, holding Mrs. Margaret's hand. I'm fine, dear. Just a little dizzy. Mrs. Margaret tried to smile, but Jennifer could see she was more fragile than ever. Dr. Williams, who was on duty, approached them. "Dr. Jennifer," he greeted, "your mother had a fall, but there don't appear to be any fractures. We're running some tests to evaluate further." "Thank you, Dr. Williams," Jennifer said, trying to control her anxiety. "I need to speak with you privately," Dr. Williams said gently. They stepped aside, and Dr. Williams explained, "Jennifer, your mother is showing progressive signs of frailty. The falls are becoming more frequent. She's losing weight, and there are some neurological signs that concern me." "What are you suggesting?" Jennifer asked, though she already knew the answer. "I think it's time to consider more intensive care," Dr. Williams said carefully. "She can't stay home alone anymore." Jennifer felt her world collapsing. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared. "I can take care of her," Jennifer said quickly. "I can hire someone to stay with her during the day." "Jennifer, your mother needs 24-hour care, and you have your career, your life," Dr. Williams spoke affectionately. "There are good options for specialized care." Jennifer knew he was right, but the idea of placing her mother in a facility terrified her. That night, after Mrs. Margaret was discharged and was under observation at home with a temporary caregiver, Jennifer called Rebecca. "Becky, I need to talk to someone," she said, visibly shaken. "Of course, what happened?" Rebecca asked, concerned. Jennifer told her about her mother's condition, the doctor's recommendation, and her fears. "I don't know what to do," Jennifer confessed. "I feel like I'm abandoning her." "Jennifer, caring for someone sometimes means making difficult decisions," Rebecca said gently. "You're not abandoning your mother. You're ensuring she gets the best possible care." "But what if she feels rejected? What if she thinks I don't love her anymore?" Jennifer was nearly crying. "Can I tell you something?" Rebecca asked. "Of course. When I had my accident, my mother couldn't handle the situation. She felt guilty, inadequate, unable to help me," Rebecca shared. "For a while, I thought it was because she didn't love me enough." "And then?" Jennifer asked. "Then I understood that it was precisely because she loved me so much that she couldn't bear to see my suffering. Sometimes love shows itself in ways we don't immediately understand," Rebecca explained. "Do you think I should consider a nursing home?" Jennifer asked. "I think you should talk with your mother," Rebecca suggested. "She's an intelligent woman. Let her be part of the decision." The next day, Jennifer had a frank conversation with Mrs. Margaret. "Mum, we need to talk about some care arrangements," Jen began. "I know, dear," Mrs. Margaret said, surprising Jennifer. "I know I can't stay alone anymore." "Mum," Jen started. "Jen, I raised 2 daughters practically by myself. I can tell when someone is overwhelmed," Mrs. Margaret took her daughter's hand. "And I know you're trying to take care of me, your job, your new project. It's too much. But I want to take care of you," Jennifer said. "And you will keep taking care of me," Mrs. Margaret smiled. "But maybe it's time to accept professional help." "You wouldn't mind going to a care home?" Jennifer asked hesitantly. "If it's a good place, where I can keep my dignity and you can visit me often, I don't mind," Mrs. Margaret replied. "Actually, it might even be nice to have other people my age to talk to." That afternoon, Jennifer and Rebecca visited 3 care homes in the area. The third one they visited, called Hope Residential Care, was different from the others. "It's a special place," commented the coordinator, Ms. Marcy. "Our focus is on quality of life, not just medical care." The environment was welcoming, with well-kept gardens, spacious common areas, and a family-like atmosphere. The staff treated the residents with affection and respect. "And do you have physical therapy?" Jennifer asked. "We have a complete rehabilitation team," Ms. Marcy confirmed. "In fact, our lead physical therapist came highly recommended by a rehabilitation center in the area." "Which center?" Rebecca asked, curious. "The New Horizon Rehabilitation Center," Ms. Marcy replied. "The physical therapist said she was mentored by a professional from there. Rebecca Wilson, I think." Rebecca and Jennifer exchanged looks, surprised. "I'm Rebecca Wilson," Rebecca said. "Really?" Ms. Marcy got excited. "What a wonderful coincidence. Dr. Amanda always speaks very highly of your work." "Dr. Amanda?" Rebecca asked. "Amanda Foster, our physical therapist," Ms. Marcy explained. "She took a course with you last year." Rebecca remembered. Amanda was a young physical therapist who had participated in a workshop on geriatric rehabilitation that Rebecca had taught. "Small world," Jennifer commented. "Or maybe it's fate showing us this is the right place," Rebecca suggested. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Margaret moved into Hope Residential Care. Jennifer was nervous, but her mother seemed to adapt quickly. "Jenny, I met a very interesting lady here," Mrs. Margaret shared during one visit. "Mrs. Meredith. She was a teacher for 40 years and has amazing stories to tell." "That's great, Mom." Jennifer smiled, relieved to see her mother excited. "And the physical therapist here is wonderful," Mrs. Margaret continued. "She said she knows you and Rebecca." "Yeah, we spoke with her," Jennifer confirmed. "Dear, you made the right choice." Mrs. Margaret took Jennifer's hand. "I'm well cared for here, and you can focus on your important work." That Thursday, during the support group meeting, Jennifer shared her experience with the group. "This week, I learned something important," she said. "Sometimes loving someone means accepting that we can't do everything ourselves." "How so?" asked Anne, a new participant whose husband had become quadriplegic after diving into shallow water. "My mother needed specialized care that I couldn't provide while working full-time," Jennifer explained. "For a long time I thought that would be my failure as a daughter." "And now?" Anne asked. "Now I understand that finding the best possible care for her was an act of love," Jennifer replied. "Do you think this applies to other situations?" asked Robert, whose father had lost his vision due to diabetes. "Absolutely," Rebecca replied. "Sometimes loving someone means accepting professional help, means recognizing our limitations, means making difficult choices thinking about the well-being of the person we love." The conversation continued for another hour, with each family sharing their own struggles and discoveries. The group had become a true support network, where people going through similar situations could find understanding and guidance. After the meeting, Rebecca and Jen went for coffee. "You know," Rebecca said, "sometimes I think about how our story could have been different." "How so?" Jen asked. "If you hadn't been humiliated in the central square, we probably never would have met," Rebecca reflected. "I would keep doing my work, you would keep doing yours, but we wouldn't have created this partnership." "That's true," Jen agreed. "It's strange to think that something so bad generated something so good." "It wasn't the bad thing that generated the good thing," Rebecca corrected. "It was our choice to turn pain into growth that generated something good." "You're right," Jen smiled, "and I'm grateful we made that choice." 6 months later, the hospital's neurological rehabilitation program was running at full steam. The partnership between Mercy Medical Center and New Horizon Rehabilitation Center had become a model for other institutions. The support group grew and now had 15 regular families. Jen and Rebecca had been invited to speak at conferences about humanization in medicine and rehabilitation. On a Thursday afternoon, Rebecca was leaving the rehabilitation center when she saw a familiar scene in the square, a woman arguing with someone in a wheelchair. Rebecca approached and saw it was a different situation. The woman was trying to help an elderly man who had gotten lost and didn't know how to get back home. "Can I help?" Rebecca offered. "Please," the woman said, relieved. "This gentleman says he lives nearby, but doesn't remember the exact address." Rebecca patiently talked with the elderly man and managed to find out where he lived. They accompanied him home, where a worried caregiver was waiting. "Thank you so much," the woman said to Rebecca as they were returning. "You were very kind." "You're welcome," Rebecca smiled. "This is how life should always be, people helping people." "Your name is Rebecca, right?" the woman asked. "I work at the reception desk at Mercy Medical Center. I've heard wonderful things about you." "Oh, that's great," Rebecca said. "Do you know Dr. Jennifer?" "Yes, I do. Everyone at the hospital has enormous admiration for her," the woman replied. "They say she's changed a lot in recent months, become much more human, closer to the patients." "That's true," Rebecca agreed, feeling a special pride for her friend. That night, Rebecca told Jen about the encounter in the square. "It's funny," Jen said. "That square that was the setting for our worst moment is now a place where you continue doing good things." "It's not the square that changed," Rebecca observed. "It's us who changed. Now when I pass by there, I see opportunities to help instead of reliving pain." You know what? Jen said. I think it's time we did something special in that square. What do you have in mind? Rebecca asked, curious. How about organizing an awareness event about disability rights? Jen suggested. Right there, in the place where it all began. That's a beautiful idea, Rebecca said, excited. We can bring patients from the center, families from the support group, and other healthcare professionals, Jen completed. To show that it's possible to have more human medicine, they began planning the event immediately. They secured authorization from the city, support from various health institutions, and partnerships with disability rights organizations. The event was scheduled for a Saturday morning, exactly 1 year after the incident that had changed their lives. On the day of the event, the central square was transformed. There were tents with information about different types of disabilities, demonstrations of adapted sports, cultural presentations, and various interactive activities. Michael, the churro vendor, was there with his cart, offering free churros to all participants. Doctor, he said to Jennifer as she approached, who would have thought that mess a year ago would lead to all this, huh? It's true, Michael, Jennifer smiled, and thank you for recording that video. If you hadn't done that, I might never have realized what needs to change. Sometimes bad things serve to show the way to good things, Michael philosophized. During the event, Jennifer and Rebecca went up to the small stage they had set up to talk about their story. 1 year ago, right here in this square, I committed one of the cruelest acts of my life, Jennifer began, looking at the audience of over 300 people. I publicly humiliated someone who didn't deserve it and didn't even know me, driven by prejudice and ignorance. And 1 year ago, right here in this square, I experienced one of the deepest pains I've ever felt, Rebecca continued. Not just the physical pain of being without my medication, but the emotional pain of being judged and condemned for something I didn't choose. But today we're here to show that pain can turn into purpose, Jennifer said, that mistakes can become lessons, that people can change, and that forgiveness can free both the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven, Rebecca added. They told their whole story, from the humiliation to the friendship, from the regret to the professional partnership. The audience was completely engaged, many people crying, others smiling, all touched by the sincerity and transformation they were witnessing. The message we want to leave today is simple, Jennifer said at the end. We all have the power to choose who we want to be each day. We can choose to be people who spread pain or people who spread healing. And when we make mistakes, Rebecca added, we can choose to learn and grow instead of hiding in shame. The audience gave a standing ovation. Among the crowd, Jennifer saw her mother, who had come from Hope Residential Care, especially for the event, applauding proudly. She also saw Jessica, Rebecca's sister, who had graduated from nursing school and now worked in the hospital's rehabilitation program. After the presentations, many people approached to talk with them, share their own stories and ask for advice. A young woman of about 20 approached Rebecca. My name is Lauren, she said. I became paraplegic in a motorcycle accident 6 months ago. I'm still learning to deal with it. Hi, Lauren, Rebecca smiled. How are you feeling today? Better after hearing your story, Lauren replied. Could you give me some advice on how to find purpose after such a big change? Of course, Rebecca said, remembering herself 3 years ago. The first tip is, be patient with yourself. Grieving is a process and it's okay to have bad days. And the second, Lauren asked. Look for small ways to help other people, Rebecca suggested. It could be something simple, like listening to someone going through difficulties. Purpose often emerges when we shift our focus from ourselves to others. Thank you, Lauren said, moved. Can I get in touch with you? Of course, Rebecca gave her card. And if you'd like, you can come to our support group on Thursdays. Meanwhile, Jennifer was talking to a young doctor who had approached her. Dr. Jennifer, I'm Dr. Ryan, a neurology resident, he introduced himself. Your story really moved me. I have to confess that sometimes I get impatient with patients too. It's normal, Jen said understandingly. Medicine is stressful. We deal with suffering constantly. But it's important to remember that behind every diagnosis, there's a person with fears, hopes, dreams. How did you change your perspective? Dr. Ryan asked. I started seeing patients as people I know and love, Jennifer explained. Every time I treat someone, I think, what if it were my mother? What if it were my friend? That completely changes how I relate to them. That's an interesting perspective, Dr. Ryan said thoughtfully. And I also sought psychological help, Jennifer added. Doctors need to take care of their own mental health to be able to care well for others. At the end of the event, when the central square was being taken down, Rebecca and Jennifer sat on the same bench where Rebecca had stayed after the humiliation a year before. How do you feel? Jennifer asked. Grateful, Rebecca replied without hesitation. Grateful that we've come this far. Me too, Jennifer agreed. You know, a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be your friend, that we'd work together, that we'd create all this, I'd never have believed it. Life has those surprises, Rebecca smiled. Sometimes our biggest challenges become our greatest blessings. And our biggest mistakes become our greatest lessons, Jennifer added. They stayed there in silence for a few minutes, watching the square return to normal, people resuming their daily activities. Becky, Jennifer said finally. Yes? Thank you for forgiving me, Jennifer said, looking at her friend. And thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to change. Thank you, Rebecca returned, for showing me that people can transform when they have the courage to look at themselves. And now, Jennifer asked, what are our next plans? How about we expand the support group, Rebecca suggested. We could create specific groups for different situations, spinal cord injury, amputations, visual impairment. I love the idea, Jennifer said excitedly, and we could also partner with schools for inclusive education. And workshops for healthcare professionals on patient-centered care, Rebecca added. We have work for a lifetime, Jennifer laughed. Better that way, Rebecca said. Purpose has no expiration date. 3 months after the event in the square, Rebecca received a call that moved her. It was from the Department of Health. Miss Rebecca Wilson, said the voice on the other end of the line. My name is Dr. Paul Carter. I work at the National Coordination for Health of Persons with Disabilities. Yes, that's me, Rebecca replied, curious. We're contacting you because we heard about the extraordinary work you're doing in Denver, Dr. Paul explained. We'd like to invite you for a national consultancy. How so? Rebecca asked, surprised. We want to replicate your model in other cities across the country, Dr. Paul said. The partnership between hospital and rehabilitation center, the support groups, the patient-centered approach, all of that could benefit thousands of people. Rebecca was speechless for a moment. Dr. Paul, this is amazing, she said finally. But I need to talk with my partner, Dr. Jennifer. Of course, you can contact us when you have an answer, Dr. Paul said. But I hope it's a yes. The United States needs more professionals like you. Rebecca rushed to share the news with Jennifer. Becky, this is incredible, Jennifer said, euphoric. Imagine how many people we could help. Would you accept? Rebecca asked. It would be a national project, very demanding. I accept without hesitation, Jennifer replied. In fact, I think everything we've been through was preparation for this. So we're changing the country, Rebecca joked. We're changing one person at a time, Jennifer corrected. That's how real change happens. A year later, the national program was up and running. 50 cities in the United States already had the integrated rehabilitation and family support model developed by Rebecca and Jennifer. They traveled across the country conducting workshops, training professionals, implementing support groups. It was intense work but extremely rewarding. During one of these trips, they were in Miami when Rebecca received a message from Sophia, the 12-year-old girl who had been one of the first patients Rebecca treated with Jennifer as a volunteer. Aunt Becky, I passed my physical therapy entrance exam. I want to be like you when I grow up. Thank you for teaching me that disability isn't a limitation. Sophia. Rebecca showed the message to Jennifer, and both were moved. She wants to be a physical therapist, Rebecca said, tears in her eyes. Because she had you as an example, Jennifer observed. Do you see how our actions have consequences we can't even imagine? Our actions, Rebecca corrected. If you hadn't changed, if you hadn't become my partner, maybe Sophia would never have seen she could dream big. That evening in their Miami hotel, Rebecca called Sophia. Sophia, congratulations on passing your exam, Rebecca said excitedly. Thank you, Aunt Becky, Sophia replied, euphoric. Can you believe I made it? Of course you made it, Rebecca said. You've always been determined and smart. The wheelchair never changed that. Aunt Becky, can I tell you something? Sophia asked. Of course, sweetheart. Remember when you and Dr. Jennifer first treated me 2 years ago? Sophia began. I remember, yes. I was so angry I thought my life was over, Sophia continued. But seeing you two working together, seeing how you treated each other with affection, even after everything that happened, that taught me there's always a second chance. Sophia, you're touching my heart, Rebecca said, moved. And you taught me that we can choose to be victims or examples, Sophia added. I chose to be an example. After the call, Rebecca kept thinking about Sophia's words. A 14-year-old girl had understood one of life's most important lessons. There's always a choice. The next day, during a workshop in Miami, Jennifer told Sophia's story to the participants. Did you see how our attitude influences other people? She said to the healthcare professionals present. Sophia learned about resilience not through words, but by observing examples. How can we be better examples? Asked a nurse from the audience. By being authentic, Rebecca answered. Not pretending we're perfect, but showing we can grow, learn, change. And treating every patient the way we'd want our loved ones to be treated, Jennifer added. After the workshop, a doctor approached them. Doctors, you saved my career, she said emotionally. How so? Jennifer asked. I was almost giving up on medicine, the doctor explained. I was tired, disillusioned, treating patients like numbers. But hearing your story, seeing that transformation is possible, I decided I'm going to try again. That's why we're here, Rebecca said with a smile, to remind everyone it's never too late to start over. 2 years after the event at the Central Square, Rebecca and Jennifer received a special invitation. The World Health Organization wanted them to present their model at an international conference on humanization in healthcare in Geneva. Becky, can you believe we're going to Switzerland? Jennifer said, still processing the invitation. I believe our story is inspiring people all over the world, Rebecca answered. And that's incredible. Who would have thought that mess at the Central Square would reach the WHO? Jen laughed. It wasn't the mess that reached them, Rebecca corrected. It was our transformation. The presentation in Geneva was a success. Representatives from 60 countries attended Rebecca and Jen's lecture, and many showed interest in implementing similar programs in their countries. After the presentation, a doctor from Norway approached them. You've inspired me to completely rethink my medical practice, she said. Can I stay in touch to learn more? Of course, Jen replied. We'll always be available to share what we've learned. And to learn, too, Rebecca added. Every culture has something to teach about care and compassion. That evening, at the hotel in Geneva, Rebecca and Jen were talking about the future. Have you ever thought about writing a book about our story? Jen suggested. That would be interesting, Rebecca agreed. But not just our story, the story of all the people who taught us along the way. Sophia, Peter, your mother, Michael the churro vendor. Jen listed. And you, Rebecca said. Especially you. Me? Jen asked, surprised. You taught me that courage isn't never making mistakes. It's having the courage to admit when we're wrong and fighting to make things right, Rebecca explained. And you taught me that real strength isn't not feeling pain, it's continuing to walk despite the pain, Jen returned. I think we learned from each other, Rebecca smiled. And we're still learning, Jen agreed. 5 years after the incident at the Central Square, Rebecca and Jen had become national and international references in humanizing healthcare and rehabilitation. Their programs were running in more than 200 U.S. cities and beginning to be implemented in other North American countries. The rehabilitation center where Rebecca worked had expanded and now served over 2,000 people per month. Jen's neurological rehabilitation program at the hospital had become a center of excellence, receiving patients from across the country. But perhaps the most significant achievement was personal. Both had found not only professional purpose, but a true and lasting friendship. On a Thursday evening, during one of the support group meetings that now had over 50 regular families, a new mother in the group asked a question that made them reflect. Do you think everything you built together was worth the pain you felt at the beginning? Asked Marcy, mother of a young man who had lost his sight in a work accident. Rebecca and Jen looked at each other, thinking about the question. Marcy, that's a difficult question. Rebecca began. "I wouldn't wish that humiliation on my worst enemy. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But," Jen continued, "if I could go back in time and choose not to go through that, I wouldn't choose to avoid it." "Why?" Marcy asked, curious. "Because that pain taught me compassion in a way no other experience could have," Jen explained. "And it gave me the most precious friendship of my life. And it taught me that forgiveness is a superpower," Rebecca added. "It not only frees the one who forgives, but can completely transform the one who is forgiven." "So you think suffering can be positive?" another group member asked. "We don't believe suffering is positive," Rebecca answered carefully, "but we believe we can transform suffering into wisdom, pain into purpose, wounds into scars that tell stories of overcoming." "The difference lies in the choice," Jen completed. "We always have the choice of how to react to what happens to us." After the meeting, Rebecca and Jen walked to the central square where it had all begun. It was something they did often, a way to remember where they came from and how much they had grown. "5 years," Rebecca said, sitting on the bench where they used to talk. "It feels like a lifetime," Jen agreed, "and at the same time, it feels like yesterday." "Have you ever regretted anything in these 5 years?" Rebecca asked. "Only one thing," Jen replied. "What?" "Taking so long to find you," Jen smiled, "even if it happened in the worst possible way." "Oh, but maybe it had to be like that," Rebecca philosophized. "Maybe I wouldn't have been ready for this friendship if you had met me earlier." "What do you mean?" Jen asked. "Before the accident, I was a very naive person," Rebecca explained. "I thought the world was always fair, that people were always good. I needed to go through hardships to develop real empathy for others' pain. And I needed to hit rock bottom to discover who I really wanted to be," Jen added. "If I had continued with my old life, maybe I would never have questioned my prejudices, never developed real compassion." "So maybe our meeting happened exactly when it needed to happen," Rebecca suggested. "At the right time for both of us to learn the lessons we needed to learn," Jen agreed. They stayed there watching the movement in the square. Children playing, families strolling, couples dating, elderly people chatting on the benches, life happening in all its diversity and complexity. "Becky," Jen said suddenly. "Yes?" "Thank you for saving me," Jen said, looking at her friend. "I didn't save you," Rebecca replied. "You saved yourself. I just showed you it was possible." "No, you did save me," Jen insisted. "You saved me from becoming a bitter person. You saved me from living a life without real purpose. You saved me from dying without having truly lived." "Then thank you for saving me too," Rebecca returned. "I saved you?" Jen asked, surprised. "You taught me that it's possible to transform the worst experiences of life into something worthwhile," Rebecca explained. "You showed me that we can choose to grow instead of shrink, to love instead of hate, to build instead of destroy." "I guess we saved each other," Jen concluded. "And we saved many other people along the way," Rebecca added. "And we'll keep on saving," Jen said, determined. "One person at a time," Rebecca agreed. When the sun began to set, they got up to leave. But before leaving the square, Rebecca had an idea. "Jenny, would you be up for doing something symbolic?" she asked. "What do you have in mind?" Rebecca took a small sapling from her bag that she had bought at the flower shop. "How about we plant this here?" she suggested, "to symbolize that from this place of pain, something beautiful was born." "I love the idea," Jen said, moved. They asked the square guard for permission and planted the little sapling in a flower bed near where it had all happened. "What kind of tree is it?" Jen asked. "A yellow trumpet tree," Rebecca replied, "a tree that blooms more beautifully after going through tough times." "Perfect," Jen smiled, "like us. In a few years, when this tree is big and in bloom, other people will sit in its shade," Rebecca said, "and maybe some of them will be going through hard times. And maybe our tree will give them hope," Jen completed, "hope that it's possible to grow and bloom even after the storm." "And if someone asks why we planted this tree here," Rebecca asked, "we'll say we planted it to remember that there's always a second chance," Jen replied. "There's always the possibility of a new beginning." They watered the little sapling with water from a bottle that Rebecca carried, as if it were a symbolic baptism. "Welcome to the world, little tree," Rebecca said solemnly. Grow strong and bloom beautifully. And teach others that after winter always comes spring, Jen added. When they left the central square that day, both knew they had closed an important chapter. Not that their story had ended. On the contrary, they knew they still had much to build together, but they had completely transformed the meaning of that place, that moment, that experience. The square that was once the scene of humiliation and pain had become a symbol of transformation and hope. The encounter that began with hatred had become a life-changing friendship. The doctor who was once cruel had become an example of compassion. The woman who was once humiliated had become a source of inspiration. And all because two people chose to grow instead of diminish, to forgive instead of hold grudges, to build instead of destroy. As they walked home, Rebecca and Jen talked about their plans for the next week, for the next month, for the next year. There was always a new project, a new person to help, a new story to transform. "You know something?" Rebecca said as she was almost home. "What?" "I think our story isn't about disability, nor medicine, nor prejudice," Rebecca reflected. "What is it about, then?" Jen asked. "It's about love," Rebecca said simply. "About how love, for ourselves, for others, for life, can transform absolutely anything." "Love for what?" Jen asked, wanting to understand better. "Love for the possibility of being better today than we were yesterday," Rebecca explained. "Love for the courage to ask for forgiveness and to forgive. Love for the beauty of seeing people grow and transform. And love for the unexpected friendship that can arise from the most unlikely encounters," Jen added. "Exactly," Rebecca smiled. "Our story is about the transformative power of love." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Rebecca made the right decision to forgive Jen? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.